Yeah, I guess we are live now. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. I'm Rat. I'll be your host for today. Today's webinar is all about user acquisition trends for mobile apps. We're having industry experts here every month for you to learn more about the app business. And we'll be hearing from Tara Kirkpatrick, who is working as a mobile trends analyst at Apptopia, and she'll be sharing their insights, best practices, and strategies. I'll invite her in a few minutes later, soon. And before jumping, I'm going to share with you some updates for Adapti. As you already know, Adapt is a revenue management platform for mobile apps, and you can easily implement subscriptions to your app with Adapti and start growing your revenue. And now we have a new hot feature called Paywall Builder, and it's an easy to use editor, and no coding and design are required. We choose a template from the best working paywalls. It's a perfect tool for A/B testing, and then another cool feature is now we support App Store Service Server Notifications version 2, and with new notifications, you'll be able to receive real-time updates about your user events on your app. And also don't forget to join the biggest community for app developers, publishers, and marketers on Discord, SubHub community. I wrote the link on chat. You can join us and chat with us there. And also don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel and don't miss our upcoming events. And now uh, I want to invite my guest Tara here with me. Hey,
Hi.
how are you
Thanks so
doing?
thanks so much for having me, Mira, and for the introduction. Hi to everyone watching. My name is Tara Kirkpatrick, and I'm a mobile trends analyst at Apptopia, which is a competitive intelligence provider. So what I have for you today is market intelligence on mobile advertising trends.
Cool, Tara, and thank you for coming here today. I'm really excited to hear your insights, and uh, I think we are ready to your presentation if you're ready to.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so you can all see user acquisition trends. What will you learn today? Look, I am a big fan of creative user acquisition plays and spend a lot of time researching like the up and coming and just unexpected ways that apps can grow. But today I really want to go back to basics with you and dig into the mobile advertising data. Find out what platforms are gaining share, what ad formats might be on the rise, to help you determine at this point in the year if it's time to switch up strategy in any way, and maybe give you the motivation to go out there and experiment on any of these formats or channels that you've been thinking about. Before we get into it, just a little bit about me, and I won't give you the corporate bio spiel, but I got into mobile apps in 2020. I worked as a marketer for meditation app Insight Timer, and then I came to Apptopia to be a mobile trends analyst. How do I get to be a mobile trends analyst? Someone that looks at the data on what apps are doing to grow and all that interesting, fun stuff. Well, truth be told, I'm a marketer just like you, but in the case of Apptopia, marketing its product is all about surfacing these really cool trends so that we can show the value and demonstrate that value to audiences of what you can find in our platform. So again, we're a competitive intelligence platform that has all sorts of intel on 7 million plus apps around the world. Here are the many data points that we cover in our data sets, everything from performance metrics, app reviews, product features, SDKs, as well as like what type of product. So for example, I'll show today what's trending among subscription apps, as I know many of you are probably in that category. Demographics, and then advertising intelligence, which is the majority of today's presentation. So important to understand when I talk about our advertising intelligence, we are measuring the impressions across these different ad networks, channels, and then we can see into the top performing creatives. So while more impressions for a whole group of apps is going to indicate increased spend or investment on that channel, it's a correlation rather than me saying people are spending more on social. So just want to clarify that at the outset, and I think we can get into it. So starting out with a bird's eye view of just worldwide, all categories, where the most impressions are being had on the ad channels. And that is social, being consistently for over a year now, really since the ATT privacy changes, has been where the majority of mobile ads are performing the best in terms of impressions. Now there's a interesting trend that we'll get into, and you kind of see it reflected in iOS, where there's a move to diversify more and not just rely entirely on social as this prime discovery channel that is going to get you all these impressions. App marketers are being more strategic about, it's not all about the impressions, but quality of impressions to get quality users through the funnel and be able to monetize those users. So also want to call out that there is a movement on a global scale away from video on social and towards social interstitial, which is kind of like a return to that. And then banner ads is the other type of social ad format, or ad format in general across any of the channels that we'll talk about today. And that's remained relatively stable. So there's just this flip-flop between more creatives being created on interstitial than video from a worldwide bird's eye view. So consider that your benchmark, and then we'll get a little bit more specific because everything changes based on the nature of your app. What I found really interesting was that is the all categories worldwide view, and that includes games. But when you look at games in isolation, it's an opposite chart where social is not, it's being pushed up against by in-app ads, and gaming apps are returning to that channel to run their mobile advertisements. Same with mobile web, particularly on iOS. Just looking year over year, when we looked at Q1 2023 data, there were more mobile ads going out via mobile web for iOS audiences. And following that trend line is non-game apps marketing to the US audience and subscription non-game apps marketing to the US audience. So just like taking a step back and thinking about what this means and why this could be. It could speak to the maturity of a lot of the non-games apps that, they've been advertising on social for several years. Maybe they had a social first strategy. That is actually what we commonly see when looking between markets on our advertising intelligence. And having that itch to experiment, maybe having enough intel on who your ideal users are that you think you can jump into in-app and capture that audience in a specific ad network. And that's what now we're starting to see major apps have great success when they dip their toes in the water of in-app and mobile web channels. And the last thing that I also want to point out is that by no means is this to suggest that either of these categories, games worldwide or non-games marketing to the US, would move away from social or ditch it completely. Diversification is key. And so I think that that's a key thing to remember, is just when considering experimenting, just think about the value of testing the waters, but maintaining ground where you've already found footing. All right, so this is something I think about a lot as a marketer, and it's a quote that's often used by those influencers who are trying to convince you to invest. And it's the best time to start investing was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. And I think about it a lot as a marketer, because every day that you spend thinking, should I move on to this channel? You are taking away from that moment in time where clearly that channel is relevant, or you wouldn't be thinking about it. So not to make this a motivational speech, but keep that in mind as we go through these next few case studies on what happened when apps diverged from what they were doing to try something new. And the first app we're focusing on is the meditation app Calm. This is obviously an app with a subscription, and Calm is one of those that comes to mind when you think of apps that were getting really big in 2020 when social was huge, and in terms of a mobile advertising channel, and they had great success. So why break what wasn't broken, kind of thing? And over time, again, what we were seeing in the data is that there is a want to experiment, and then sometimes it pays off, which was the case for Calm. So Calm had a social first strategy, is what we'll call it. They were majority of their top performing ads were showing up across Meta platforms. In Q1, Calm outperformed its mental health app peers, and it was not in January like it would typically be for a meditation app who's able to capitalize on people wanting to live their best, most Zen lives. It was actually in the middle of March, and you see that spike in this chart here, which is showing the quarter. And what this is showing, if you can see, I guess the font's not that small on the big screen. So what this is showing is Q1 observed impressions and the increase there, and the change in downloads that correlates with it. So there was 112% jump in downloads at the same time that observed impressions increased as well. Ad publishers also increased, 206 total, but it was 142 more than the previous quarter, which can kind of tip you off that they're working with an ad network that is going to place you in app in over 100 different ad publishers. And that was the case. Now, this is pretty amazing to me, but 113 million impressions. And again, we know that like impressions are not the end all be all. Sometimes they can be a huge vanity metric. So I want to acknowledge that. But compared to its average, and you see the top performing next to it, 14 million, 8 million. But the average was even less than that on the social platforms that they were advertising on before, that social is known for being able to garner the most impressions. So this is pretty crazy to have that many people see. And it was in-app within the Fox News app. And that campaign runtime for this really simple creative correlated with the March 17th download spike. So just by getting it in front of a more specific targeted audience, or different like people using that app than browsing either Facebook or Instagram every day, Calm was able to like catch this next, I'm just going to use next million users as a bit of a euphemism, but you know what I mean, where they want to keep growing. And to what I always like to think of is the quote, "What gets you here won't get you there." So they've had their time catching a lot of people through social, and then now we're able to catch this new cohort by going in-app. Something else is I want to acknowledge that they were also trying ad creatives on mobile web. Thinking back to the beginning of this presentation, there's a clear increase in moving towards in-app when it comes to non-game apps marketing to the US on both iOS and Google Play. But mobile web was kind of showing up as second of the fastest growing channels for top performing ads. And I think why I wanted to show this was just it was something I was seeing a lot in the creative galleries, and could help an app marketer decide, okay, I have what I need to try this out. They're using the same creative, this kind of experiential, you get to experience their product by listening to this calming ad. And that can appear on mobile web in the same way that it would appear through a Facebook post. Okay, this is my second marketer musing. So something I think of a lot, and I'm sure many in the audience do too, of, why be original? There's a bit of an opportunity cost of coming up with something that's totally net new, when you could just look to top performing competitor and kind of rip off of that. So which button do you press? And this next story might tell you on why it's helpful to borrow from your competitors. So Sephora had an ad strategy shift in Q4, and we caught this because for 3 years, Sephora, though its app engagement, I have to call it out for having like very high, strong app engagement that's stronger than Ulta. Ulta was always outperforming it in downloads quarter over quarter. And so they took a calculated risk by borrowing strategy from Ulta to trial. Again, it was in-app ads. And they had a social first strategy as well. Majority of their top performing ads were appearing on Meta platforms. So I'll play this motion graphic for you guys to see what was going on quarter over quarter until all of a sudden Q4, Sephora closed that competitive margin gap. Now, when you look at Sephora's creative gallery in the past 180 days compared to the 180 days prior, you see that they've now really leaned into in-app ads almost exclusively. There's a small percentage of mobile web as well, but interesting that they left their foothold with social for the most part. And back to what I mentioned earlier, diversification is important to keep in mind. I think that's why that investing quote resonates as a marketer as well, because you want to maintain at least a little bit of a presence where you've been, but certainly when you're investing in new channels, trying to figure that out, you're going to spend more time, energy, effort. So will be interesting to see if Sephora returns, but I think Temu is a good example of what that experimentation and diversification looks like ongoing. And this is my marketer musing for introducing the Temu story, because they do an excellent job testing, and this is so true, just about what we are doing as marketers most of the time. You know, I feel like I can't say much more than what the meme says. But Temu's had the biggest run in history in terms of user acquisition, in terms of mobile history. So we've been looking at it very closely since launch. And one thing to call out is that as someone that's going to make history, it's not too surprising that they have a move fast and break things kind of mindset, rather than if it ain't broke, don't fix. We know that because they started out testing and we're getting great success on social platforms throughout the months of October and November. That was where most of their top performing ads for Google Play were appearing. And it was during that time that Google Play was not only outperforming iOS in downloads, but it was ranking consistently in the Google Play Store. But as an innovator leader striving for excellence, they still decided to test and try out ad networks that were going to place apps in app. And this is where, like, back to impressions being a vanity metric, we see this come into play, because ultimately they found in-app ads, while they had lower impressions, higher return on downloads. The download spike that correlated was just as high as what we saw for downloads during the period that they were mostly advertising through Meta campaigns. But the impressions were lower. So that efficiency was what they were striving for. Important to note that in Q1, we are continuing to see Temu rotate between all platforms. Social is more minimal as they are trialing or I shouldn't even say trialing anymore. I think they're enjoying results on in-app, and also have mobile web represented within their strategy. So moving into ad format highlights, like I've talked through channels on the rise, and again, to summarize, like, social is where guaranteed impressions, if you're going into a new market outside of where you've been, social is going to be, a safe bet that you will find many people to look at the ads that you place there. And what you can be perhaps encouraged to experiment with more now, depending on your app category and where you want to go into, is mobile web for discovery. I say discovery because everyone goes on mobile web in the same way that so many people are on social platforms, or with a little bit more data on your side, you could work with a ad network to go in app and potentially use repurpose some of the creatives while you're testing. And so speaking of creatives and the kind of formats that you could test on, video and interstitial had the highest year-over-year growth for both iOS and Google Play ads. Video particularly I want to highlight because on each channel there's top performing ads growing on video. And so just that indication that there's more energy, investment, effort going behind that. And it is something that I know as I sit here, like video feels like more energy, investment, creativity, all of that. Definitely one of those things that you could put off and was best to start a year ago. So wanted to highlight video being strong and something to move toward or lean into more. And then interstitial ads. Back to the first bird's eye view slide of worldwide, social interstitial was having this rise in growth, and definitely that is actually represented not just on social, when you look at non-games marketing to the US, but also mobile web and in-app. So when we look at like the creative trends, best for social, user-generated content. This is a summary of like the creative gallery on Apptopia is sorted from top impressions. So in going through and preparing each of these data stories and looking at competitors for the apps featured, this was coming to the top that, for example, this fabulous daily habit tracker, their top performing ad is this social interstitial. And I put it in user-generated content with an asterisk to explain that we all know what user-generated content is when it comes to like a TikTok video lookalike. But another version of it, I'd like to consider presenting it this way is when you're scrolling through on a social platform and this looks like it could have come from an influencer that posts about habits. Calm had a good one as well, that it wasn't with the Calm branding at all, and it was teaching about, I think, the chakra system. So it just, as a viewer, you might lean in more because as a viewer, you're a bit sick of seeing ads, but you are willing to learn something. If that's something you're interested in, then you see the brand behind it that's teaching you that. And there's a level of appreciation for that attention, time spent. And then you know a little bit more about what they might be about on the inside. And then for trialing in-app and mobile web, something that was surprising was to see so much of the in-app video and mobile web video growth that I just spoke to on the last slide was as simple as adding motion graphics to the standard logo and App Store rating top line message of your app image that's usually like a banner ad. So I thought that was interesting and again encouraging for when it's like I should experiment, but isn't that more energy or more, I have to think a little bit more about it? Not necessarily. This is the majority of Temu's creative gallery actually is like these motion graphics of their banner ads. And then best for video across any channel, I'll highlight experiential advertising, which when I say experiential, it's sharing a bit of the product. So this might be a stretch, but I think of like the product-led growth movement. And if you can capture that in an advertising format, it could potentially be like as compelling as somebody getting to the inside of the app and experiencing that. So to put that out in front of, assuming like your product's great, then you should be likely to convert and keep that user within the journey of your app. So I think that to see that come up as top performing for many of these that are doing video was worth highlighting. And again, this is best for video across any channel. So we were seeing this across social platforms, same ad across mobile web and within the in-app experience. All right.
Yep.
Questions?
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you so much for your presentation. And Colin was a great example. I love it personally. Uh, I will check if we have questions on chat.
Awesome.
Yeah, we have a question on chat. What percentage of an app should be in a subscription system in order for users to use the app more? Would you like to answer it?
Can you repeat it one more time?
Yeah, okay. What percentage of an app should be in a subscription system in order for users to use the app more?
Okay. I'm not sure. I was just looking to see if I could see it in chat because I'm not.
Yeah, we can't see in the chat, and I'll write it to you,
Oh, there we
and
go.
then yeah,
Should be in a subscription in order for apps.
it's a question for subscription system, not about your presentation. If you want, I can.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was thinking it had to do with the presentation, but
Yeah, it's
that's more
not
a question
about a
for
present.
you, Mirat, that
Yeah,
I mean, I'd be curious to know the answer too, but
yeah,
that's
I
your
can, yeah, I can answer it if you want.
yeah.
Uh, I think you need to optimize it with A/B testing. I mean subscriptions, and you can make your apps the best feature premium to gain more paid subscribers. I would say test, and test again for
There
this
we go.
question. Yeah, I think we have another question, and I'll write it to you on chat.
It says online.
Uh, yeah, did you see
That
it?
yeah, I can. That's another one for you though.
Ah, again, for me, what is
Yeah.
the best way to monetize an app where users only use it sporadically? We have about, yeah, I would say you can try to show your paywall after onboarding, and it's nice to think about to show paywall to every customer. Users need to see your app is paid and you have paid features with subscribing, and you can increase your subscribers with adding a paywall after onboarding and before a core feature to your app. It will work, you know, believe me. And I think we have no questions on chat, but I have community questions for you, Tara,
Okay.
if you are ready.
Oh yeah.
Do you think that Apple Search Ads is a profitable ad network for subscription apps? I think it's a good question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I only didn't include Apple Search Ad stories because I know you recently had someone sharing many more specifics on it. But yes, I mean, I think that's another case where you're sitting here thinking about it because you're hearing it's a relevant channel, it's working, and experiment with it, because the best time to do that was last month, and the second best time is now. I think that I mean, I'm trying to think of a subscription app category example. I've seen in shopping in particular, that's how like major retailers or e-commerce have even been able to take high intent users of indirect competitors. We're talking like Amazon taking from Home Depot high intent searchers of the Home Depot app when it comes to things like home improvement. And yeah, I would just encourage to experiment and learn with that channel now, because industries holding back are just doing a bit of a disservice, because it's continuing to grow strongly, and apps are finding success and getting more strategic as they like learn by doing. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's the most expensive channel for ads, app search ads, because they have limited ads spaces. I think you can run ads for search results, Today tab, and more apps, and uh, one more, but I forgot it
Yeah.
right now. Four places for ads on search ads. That's why it's the most expensive place to run ads
Yeah.
for me personally.
Yeah. I do think when I think of health and fitness, it just comes top of mind when I think of subscriptions. I mean, at the end of the day, like, to be successful converting on an ad, you're capitalizing on a consumer's craving. So it's quite compelling, like the idea, the craving of like being more healthy or having better habits. I understand the point of it being expensive, and I think though that it could be that time and place where if they're searching uh, something that you were able to pay for, and it's linked to the value proposition of your app, I would just logically, I would think that it would convert. So something to think about, and hopefully as the channel expands and has more than four placements, which I expect that it will. I mean, Apple is very motivated to build a business around this, that it could become more accessible in terms of affordability.
Yeah, I think they need more placements for ads
Yeah.
on the App Store. And I have one more question. How can we analyze competitors' user acquisition strategies?
Yeah, great question. We're actually working on some templates to share that will be downloadable on this topic in the coming months. But I would say that you should have two markets of your competitors, and look to those direct competitors that you might wake up thinking about all the time. And that's a regular monitoring, and I would caution not to look at them and copy everything, because you have your own brand message and originality that you want to maintain. So back to that Sephora Ulta example, I think borrowing the placement is very smart, because they borrowed, like, where should the ad be placed? Oh, it looks like Ulta's doing well in app, specifically in language learning apps. And so then Sephora got in-app in Duolingo and had one of its biggest spikes during that Q4 time period, correlating with that placement. But it, didn't mean that they were copying Ulta's messaging or anything like that. And the second market I would encourage, and maybe there's a third too, but the second one is indirect competitors. It's like if you are calm, look outside of meditation apps and into mental health apps at large, and even apps like Fabulous Habit Tracker that are in essence like able, especially for advertising, like looking at Fabulous is great because they're able to capitalize on that craving that humans have to live a better, healthier life. So you have to put yourself in, you have to jump around to a couple different categories. And, when we share content, like when I shared today, if you're not a shopping app, there's always something to learn from your peers, no matter how different they may seem. And one thing I forgot to call out in the beginning when I focused on games specifically is like bottom line for that I've learned in mobile apps is like games are always 10 steps ahead. So no matter which type of app you are, I'm always looking at games for what's going to be the next trend that I can get ahead of instead of waiting on.
Cool. I have last question for today. Do you think that it is worth working with influencer for user acquisition?
Okay. I really like this question. So I would consider, because you brought up search ads being expensive, and like if you're a subscription app who feels like that channel is unaccessible, but you're looking at an influencer that is just as expensive and thinking like they might have more value, I would just be careful of that. I think micro influencers could be better, but at the same time, the best would be creating more of a community where you can get that organic user generated content, and then maybe from there identifying the lowest tier influencer to scale that user generated content. And ultimately, like that's a more closely tied funnel to the inside of your app having an engaged community and people visiting it. When you engage with a like very expensive celebrity, they first off, you want to hope that the app, like them using your app, is organic. That's like best case scenario. But even then, remember that they're probably not going to go on the inside of the app and make themselves known that they're doing that. They're not going to really do anything outside of the contract, because that is such a, like, for the highest level influencer, that is how they make money. And no matter how much they appreciate your product, the relationship changes on the other side of that contract. And that, that was an experience that we had at the meditation app, like trying to find that balance of like keeping it community driven, because at the end of the day, creating community, just like you do, Murat, for Apptopia, is really like the best. It's the best for the product and engagement over time. So you want to keep that integrity a bit, in my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you for all your answers. I think we have no more questions left. I want to thank you again to join us today and for your time and for your presentation. And also thank you all for joining us today. I hope you love the content and see you next week for a new webinar. And bye bye.
Thanks so much, everyone. And if you come up with questions after the fact, you can find me on LinkedIn. Would love to speak with this community more as well about all things user acquisition in mobile. So thanks, Murat.